This Mercury retrograde is going to be a little bit different than the other previous Mercury retrogrades that we've had because this one is happening in the watery sign of Cancer. Cancer rules our emotional self. It rules things like home and family, nurturing. And so rather this being a Mercury retrograde that usually messes with our thoughts or communications, this one's going to be affecting more of our emotional body, diving deep and going over any past emotions. Especially with Cancer, it rules things like memories and nostalgia, going back to maybe some things that have happened in childhood, reassessing and reevaluating these emotions that we have maybe kept stored underneath the surface, calling them up now during this retrograde so they can be healed and we can move forward from a place of finally addressing these deeper wounds, these deeper emotional blockages that may have been getting in the way from us moving on to this next stage of our evolution. Some key dates that I want you guys to keep in mind for this retrograde is that the retrograde is starting on June 29th. The peak of this retrograde, known as the Cazimi point, this is where the Sun and Mercury will meet exactly in the sky. This will be happening on July 12th. This usually marks a time in where the clarity starts to finally come in. All of the fog, the haziness, the confusion starts to open up, and we start to really understand what was the meaning, what was the purpose that this Mercury retrograde was trying to show us. Because the light of the sun is now burning through this Mercury. It is burning through all of that past energy if you decide to work through it. Of course, as I've mentioned in all of my other astrology videos, these forecasts, these predictions, this is just the energy that is around us at the time. This is what the planetary energies are showing. It is up to each individual person on whether or not they choose to work with these energies, or if they want to work against these energies or not really do anything at all. This is why some people can stay stuck in the same level of their evolution, not really necessarily changing, not really working on anything. Or we can work with the energies that are flowing with us and continue our evolutionary path with the energies that are being allowed to us. So going back to the key dates, the Cazimi is going to be on July 12th, is going to be the day where we finally get this clarity, and it's also going to be a great day for releasing all of this past karma, this past baggage that we may have been holding on to in terms of our emotional bodies that have been carried and passed down from generation to generation, from our parents, from our ancestors. What is it, maybe even within our family dynamics, that we have thought to be true? Ideas such as, money doesn't grow on trees. That doesn't happen for people like us. You're never going to be good enough for that. What are certain things, belief systems that have been ingrained into you, that have then shaped your emotional body to believe these certain things to be true about yourself? Now, during this retrograde, during Cancer season, is going to be a great time to do this emotional healing work so that we can finally clear these energies once and for all and move forward towards Leo season and beyond, to be able to push ourselves forward into the limelight, allowing ourselves to be seen for who it is that we truly are versus what has been ingrained and programmed into us. Remember that Cancer energy is water, and water holds energy. It stores programs. Whatever it is that you say to yourself, you are 70% water, your body absorbs that as energy codes. So making sure that you're speaking life into yourself, especially during this Mercury retrograde, especially during this Cancer season, speaking good intentions over yourself, over the water that you drink, using water as a source of healing is going to be highly beneficial during this Mercury retrograde. Another key date is the end of Mercury retrograde is going to be happening on July 24th, so that will be finally Mercury stations direct and it will start moving forward. However, if you've been following Mercury retrogrades and astrology for a while, you know that that usually isn't the full story, that isn't the true end of the retrograde, because now that Mercury has moved backwards, it now has to go back forward, and it's going to go over all of that area of Cancer that it just went retrograde in. So this is what's called the shadow period. The shadow officially ends, which means we are finally out of all of that emotional energy. We are finally clearing all of that energy out by August 7th. August 7th is going to be finally the day where Mercury is now entering into fully new territory. It is no longer going back to this area of Cancer. Overall, this Mercury retrograde period, I don't see it to be extremely problematic. There are a couple of other aspects that are going to be happening during this Mercury retrograde that can be problematic in of themselves. Not necessarily the Mercury retrograde itself, but the fact that there's other planetary alignments happening, such as the Mars-Uranus conjunction happening in the beginning of July. We are also going to be having our first set of eclipses happening very close to this time of the Mercury retrograde as well. So there's going to be a lot of shifting, a lot of changing energies. I would suggest to make sure you're subscribed to my channel because I do put out weekly astrology videos so you can stay in tune and in touch with how the energies are shifting beyond just Mercury retrogrades. But overall, there's actually a lot of really good energy sprinkled in with this slightly chaotic energy as well. So I wouldn't necessarily label this Mercury retrograde as good or bad. Obviously, there's going to be some signs that are going to be feeling this energy the most. Obviously, Cancer, since this is happening in your sign, it's going to feel a little bit more tumultuous. Being a Cancer, you guys are used to experiencing the depths of emotion, used to experiencing and going over any type of family dynamics, any type of issues going with that. Of course, it doesn't necessarily make it easy just because you're used to it, but just letting you know that's something that's going to be popping up during this Mercury retrograde season and during your season. Also, if you are a fellow cardinal sign, such as an Aries, Libra, or a Capricorn, you will also be affected a little bit more so during this Mercury retrograde because it will be affecting more prominent positions in your birth chart. If you are a Gemini or a Virgo, you guys are always a little bit more affected during Mercury retrogrades simply because your ruling planet is Mercury. So when your ruling planet decides to go retrograde, things may feel a little bit off. The fact that your ruling planet is now in a watery sign may feel a little bit more confusing. It can feel a lot more emotional. So if you notice as a Gemini or a Virgo, you're feeling a little bit more emotional. You're diving into past situations. You're really like going into and repeating past situations over and over and over in your head because you're really trying to understand them so you can finally move past them and possibly not repeat those scenarios anymore. That's definitely a theme that's going to be showing up a lot more with this Mercury retrograde. So don't beat yourself up about it. Don't feel too down about it. Realize that this is once again just the current energy of the times, and it will come to a pass soon enough. Just making sure if these feelings do come up that you are working through them in the best ways that you can. If you need, to reach out to somebody who's a professional, like a therapist, marriage counselor, relationship counselor, whatever it is that you need to support you during this time, make sure that you're taking those steps necessary. This Mercury retrograde is going to be more of an emotional one. This is going to be a more relational and emotional Mercury retrograde as opposed to a more physical, material type of Mercury retrograde. Now, let's go over sign by sign, it based off of your rising sign. If you have no idea what I mean, it's okay. Just figure out what your rising sign is. If you don't know what your rising sign is, I will leave a calculator down below so you can type in your birth details. You need to make sure that your birth time is accurate. If not, then your rising sign won't be accurate. So I will be doing these general interpretations based off of your rising sign. Once again, reiterating that this is a general interpretation. Every single person's chart is different. Where you have your planets, how they're being aspected to this Mercury retrograde, how they're being aspected to the other planets that are going to be happening during the retrograde as well, will change for each and every individual. These are very general readings based off of where Cancer falls in your specific chart. Even if you don't have a Cancer sun, moon, or rising, you still have Cancer in your chart. It's just in a specific house. So you can find out that information with the calculator I will put down below. There's also an app that I really love called Time Passages. If you know your birth time, your date, location, all of the good stuff, you can put your information into Time Passages and it will actually give you a breakdown of how the current transits will be affecting you. But let's quickly dive into, if you know your rising sign, and if you are a Cancer rising, then this Mercury retrograde will be happening in your first house. The first house has to do with your identity. It's how you present yourself out into the world. It's how people perceive you. It is your look. So with this Mercury retrograde, you're going to start having these feelings of like, maybe I should change my look. Maybe I should change my appearance. Is this really in touch and in line with who I am and how I want to present myself? You're going to really start diving deep into what ways you can shift your appearance that feel more in alignment with you. Because being a Cancer rising, a lot of it is based off of your emotion and what feels good to you, what clothes feel good to you, what makeup feels good to you. Is it wearing makeup or no makeup? So there's so many different options, there's so many different ideas that maybe are coming into you now on how you can update and change your appearance in a way that feels more in alignment with who you truly are. Because if your external doesn't feel in alignment with how you truly feel inside, then it can be really difficult for you to feel truly authentic to yourself and express yourself in that way. And there's always going to be a feeling of like, I can't be who I truly am, and it will limit you from fully experiencing this life from a joyful, grounded, and open space. So also maybe going into, how is it that I want to express myself that I feel like I haven't been able to express myself? And why is it that I feel like I can't express myself in that way? Why is it that I feel like I can't show up in this way? Is it because this one specific person or maybe someone in the past has told me that it was weird or that wouldn't look good on me? With the Mercury being retrograde, it's time to experiment. It doesn't necessarily mean that the ideas that you have on how you want to change your look are something that's going to stay with you, but it is a great time to start questioning and experiment and see what actually feels right to you. You could decide that you want to change your wardrobe, you want to get some new clothes, but you aren't exactly sure of what looks good on you, what colors look good on you, what cuts look good on you. It's totally okay to experiment, try a couple things on, maybe return some things if you decide that you don't want them anymore once, Mercury starts going direct. But it is a time for experimentation. So don't get so caught up on trying to have things all figured out during the retrograde. This is the time where you're figuring things out. So once Mercury does go direct, you have a better and clearer understanding as to what looks best on you and what is better for your own personal style and identity. If you are a Gemini rising, then this Mercury retrograde in the sign of Cancer will be happening in your second house. The second house has to do with your resources, your sense of self-worth, your money, your income. All of these themes are going to be coming under reflection and introspection. You're going to start reflecting on how it is that you make your money. What are your belief systems when it comes to your self-worth? You're going to revisit old financial plans. You're going to just do some sort of reanalyzing, restructuring when it comes to your finances. And since it's in the sign of Cancer, Cancer is all about your safety. It is your stability. The way you make money has to feel safe to you. It has to feel nurturing to you. So figuring out ways that you can maybe change the way that you're making money or figure out new pathways of making money that feel stable, that feel secure, that feel nurturing, and that honor your levels of self-worth and what you know that you deserve. Of course, all of the answers aren't going to be figured out during the retrograde. The retrograde is a time for going over things and figuring things out, experimenting with new things. So once Mercury does go direct, you actually have a better plan moving forward on what it is you want your financials to look like. So this is less about making like any major purchases and any major financial decisions, because during the retrograde, chances are you may go back on them, but it is a time to understand your relationship with your resources a little bit better. And that's going to happen through some self-reflection, through some experimentation, and through some trial and error. If you are a Taurus rising, then chances are this Mercury retrograde is going to be happening in your third house of Cancer. And the third house has to do with your communication style. It has to do with your friends, people that are in your surrounding, like your community, your neighborhood, your siblings. Third house also has to do with like transportation, so like cars and even public transport. So Taurus risings, you are more likely than the other signs to maybe encounter some of those more typical Mercury retrograde problems in terms of like transportation issues. So making sure that you make and prepare enough time ahead of time of your scheduled outings, making sure that the way you're communicating to your friends and even to your family is a way that is grounded and not in a way that is overly emotional, or you're not just speaking only from emotion, because remember, Mercury is in the sign of Cancer. It is a highly emotional sign, and being in the house of communication, this can influence and color your communication style in making it a little bit more emotional than usual, and you may go back on a few things that you may have said when you were emotionally charged. So making sure that you're just paying attention to all of those details, your car, the scheduling, making sure that you're getting to places on time, making sure that you're holding off on any important type of contracts or agreements until the retrograde is over, or at least waiting until the Kazemi point, which is that flash of insight and intuition that is going to make everything make sense, which is going to be happening on July 12th, I mentioned in the intro. Making sure that you're not making any like abrupt, rash decisions based off of emotion, especially when it comes to like signing contracts, purchasing a car, cutting off communications with old friends. I'm not saying that that's not something that maybe needs to happen. Maybe these are all things that do need to happen, especially if it's something that you've been thinking about for a while. The retrograde's okay for you to like execute on those things that you've been thinking about for a while, but typically new things that are just now coming up during the retrograde, it is a completely new idea, like, oh, I want to get a new car. I haven't really thought about it before. I haven't really considered it before. And then literally within that week, you go shopping and you end up getting a new car. You could end up going back on that decision, right? But if it's something that you had been thinking about for a while and you've been doing all of the research, and finally now during the retrograde period, something happens where you're like, I need to get this new car, get the car because you've already been thinking about it, you've been going over it. Is there a chance that you may need to like finish up some things once the retrograde is over and Mercury's going direct? Yes, that's a possibility. But for the most part, retrogrades are a time of reflecting and going over things that you have already been considering. Any new, fresh ideas, anything completely out of the blue, out of the ordinary, I wouldn't do like full send on any of those things during Mercury retrograde, simply because you may just end up changing your mind later on down the road, especially with this being in Cancer. Emotions change and move from day to day. So I would just be mindful of that. If you are an Aries rising, then this Mercury retrograde is going to be happening in your fourth house. And the fourth house definitely brings up a lot of those themes that I was discussing in the introduction. So if you didn't listen to the introduction, I highly suggest to go back, but I will reiterate a couple of key points here. The fourth house has to do with your home and family life. The fact that Mercury retrograde is happening in the sign of Cancer, which naturally rules home and family as well, this is going to amplify those emotions and those feelings maybe coming up of past situations, childhood memories resurfacing, family dynamics coming up that are asking to be healed. If you've been planning on moving as well, because once again, home and family, if you've been planning on changing homes or moving, there may be some delays in those plans. You may have suddenly have to pivot somewhere in the middle of the Mercury retrograde because you realize, oh, maybe where I thought I wanted to move is not exactly where I want to go anymore, or you find an even better deal. It doesn't always have to be like because of a negative situation. It can be because you simply found something better, a different alternative, and now you want to move forward on that. You could also decide to reorganize your living space, make your home or even your room something that feels a little bit more in alignment with who you are and who you're becoming. But it's definitely going over, reflecting on past family dynamics, past memories, childhood memories. What are these things within your home, also within your subconscious mind, dealing with home and family, that perhaps are limiting you in some way from moving forward and moving ahead into the next stage of your evolution? Because the home is the base of the chart. The fourth house is essentially the base of the chart. And without the stability and security of this home, it's difficult for the other parts of the chart to flourish. So this is going to be a very deeply introspective time for you guys, Aries risings. This is going to be a deeply spiritual time for you as well. You already have Neptune transiting through your first house as well. So there's going to be a lot of intuitive activations, a lot of intuitive downloads, a lot of opportunities to heal from past situations. So I'm not going to say that this will be an easy transit simply because it can bring up a lot of emotions that maybe have been kept underneath the surface, but these are coming up so that you can heal them and move forward from them. So I wouldn't be afraid. Know that if you are dealing with some more of these heavier emotions, because it is bringing up a lot of difficult past experiences, maybe know that it is for your betterment, it is for your healing, because if you can successfully go through the emotions and successfully process these past emotions, past belief systems, programmings that have been ingrained in you from childhood, you can then move on to the next stage of your evolution. If you are a Pisces rising, then this Mercury retrograde is happening in your fifth house, and the fifth house has to do with your creativity, your joy, romance. So this is definitely going to be a very like nostalgic place for you guys, a nostalgic time, going back to maybe things that you used to do when you were younger that made you happy. What were things that made you happy? Little creative endeavors, maybe if you like to paint, you like to sing, you like to write songs. What is it that you used to do when you were a child, or even just a couple years ago when you were younger? What is a memory that you have of when you were happy, when you were in flow? These thoughts are going to start coming back. You're going to start feeling nostalgic towards a time where you were happy, where you were joyful. It's going to be a catalyst for you to want to recreate that now. You could also reconnect with an old romantic interest, because the fifth house does rule romance, more like short-term romances rather than long-term things. So like definitely for Pisces risings, chances of a little summer fling situationship situation can definitely happen. I would definitely recommend with this transit to tap into your inner child. This is definitely inner child healing coded for this Mercury retrograde for Pisces rising specifically, because the fifth house does rule children. So if you don't have any children of your own, connecting with your inner child, asking your inner child what they want. What is it that would make them happy? How is it that they can feel safe and taken care of? Because Cancer is about nurturing, it's about feeling safe. So bringing that healing aspect to your inner child and to any physical children that you may have, if you do have children, would be very beneficial for you during this Mercury retrograde, and are going to be themes that will show up for you. If you are an Aquarius rising, then this Mercury retrograde in Cancer will be happening in your sixth house. The sixth house has to do with your work, your daily routines, your health. So these types of themes are now going to be reflected upon to see where is it that maybe things haven't been working, things haven't been feeling super safe, super stable, super nurturing for your body. Because Cancer is about feeling nurtured, it's about feeling safe, it's about feeling comfortable. And so if your work, your health, your daily routines don't have this sense of comfort to them, it doesn't have this sense of safety to it, you feel like you're constantly on edge, you're constantly stressed out, this Mercury retrograde is going to bring that up so that you can develop these routines and daily habits that do cultivate a sense of safety and security within yourself. You could notice some issues coming up in terms of the workspace, because it does rule work, so there could be some issues in terms of communication. There could be some emotional communication that happens at work. Instead of working and pushing harder, Mercury retrograde is asking you to take a step back, reflect, and work smarter. What are small changes that you can make that have the best outcome in terms of your productivity and in terms of your health? And Mercury retrograde in Cancer is asking you to respect your body, respect your emotions, respect how you feel, so that you can actually cultivate a work routine, a health routine that is in alignment with your body and with your emotional self. If you are a Capricorn rising, this Mercury retrograde is going to be happening in a very important part of your chart. It's going to be happening in the seventh house. The seventh house has to do with relationships and partnerships. So for you, it is definitely more likely that during this Mercury retrograde, you can have exes reappear from the past, trying to spin the block, any relationship misunderstandings, renegotiating some commitments, and overall just revisiting expectations within partnerships. This isn't necessarily a time for reconciliation. It's more so a time about gaining some clarity, gaining some perspective. What is it that you need within a relationship to feel safe, secure, and nurtured? Because as a Capricorn, having Cancer in your seventh house, Cancer is about feeling safe, feeling nurtured, feeling taken care of. And so your ideal partner is someone who has those Cancerian properties, someone who is emotionally attuned, someone who's emotionally aware, who respects and cares about your feelings. So making sure that if you do end up spinning the block, if some exes do reappear, going through that checklist, okay, do they actually care about my feelings? Do they care about my emotions? Did they care about my emotions when we were together? Is my current relationship that I'm currently in, is this someone who respects me? Is this someone who I feel safe around? If the answer to those questions is no, then maybe that's a door that needs to be closed. And I'm not saying that you need to be making a decision during this Mercury retrograde, but if it is something that has been a theme that's been coming up consistently, it's been kind of a long time coming, you've been thinking about it, it's in the back of your head, Mercury retrograde is going to start bringing up these issues and making them a little bit more prominent so that you do feel more confident in making that decision when the decision needs to be made. If the clarity that arrives to you is that the current relationship you're in is not something that's sustainable to you, it's not something that feels good to you, then perhaps it would be time and wise to make that decision to end that so that you could make space for a relationship that does feel safe and nurturing to you. If you are a Sagittarius rising, then this Mercury retrograde in Cancer will be happening in your 8th house. The 8th house has to do with shared resources, intimacy, inheritances, also like deep psychological wounds. This is a very deep house and can deal with a lot of very deep emotions associated with it. It has to do with like trust and betrayal. So any experiences that you may have had in the past about trusting others, betrayal issues and trauma can definitely come up to the surface now so that you can go over it, heal through it, and move forward. I'm saying it like as if it's an easy process, but I know that it's something that takes a lot of work, a lot of effort, and going over these emotions, these heavier emotions, these emotions of betrayal, of your trust being broken, are definitely harder emotions to kind of move through. A lot of powerful realizations can emerge during this Mercury retrograde through deep inner reflection. It would also be a great time to like review any investments, any debts that you have, making a plan of action for that, any inheritances, also like maybe someone's will comes up, right? And they're like, oh, I want to include you in the will and I need to, change a couple things, but I want you in there, So going over things like that, other people's resources, how is it that other people and their resources can help you, is going to be revisited during this time of the Mercury retrograde. If you are a Scorpio rising, then this Mercury retrograde is going to be happening in your 9th house. And the 9th house has to do with higher learning, educators, traveling, long distance travel. Also has to do with your belief systems and your spiritual perspectives. So all of this is going to be evolving. You're going to start doing some self-reflection on your belief systems, your worldviews, maybe certain ideas and ideologies that you've been following for a while suddenly are facing a little bit of inner criticism or maybe some external criticism, and which is causing you to self-reflect and being like, do I really subscribe to this belief system? Do I really subscribe to this worldview? Or is that now shifting and changing? You can also start revisiting, maybe you had an idea of a certain path of study that you wanted to go down. You wanted to learn this new thing, but now all of a sudden you're like, during the Mercury retrograde, you change your mind and you realize maybe I want to pivot into something a little bit differently. I wouldn't say to completely abandon what it is that you've been doing if you've been doing it for a long time. Don't completely abandon it and be like, well, I'm just cutting off all ties, burning all bridges, never going to do that again. It is a possibility, especially if it's something that you've been considering and thinking about for a while, even prior to the retrograde. But if it's something completely new that during the retrograde you're like, oh, I've found out this new information, or like I found this new thing that I want to obsess over, so I'm just gonna go all in on this. Forget everything I've been doing up until this point. I'm not gonna do that anymore. I don't care about that. I'm gonna cut all ties. I'm gonna quit my job or something crazy, you know? I wouldn't suggest doing that if these ideas and these thoughts have only now surfaced during the retrograde. If it's something that you've been considering for a while, then all power to you. The Mercury retrograde is probably just going to bring up that feeling even more, like, okay, you've been thinking about this for a while, you've been reflecting for a while that this isn't working or this isn't the path, and you want to pivot, you want to shift, you want to change. So now that Mercury is retrograde, you're like, okay, time to finally cut ties. Like, we've already done the reflection. We've already looked it over a million times over. We know this is something that we don't want to do. Now it is time to shift it and change it. But I also want you to keep in mind that because Mercury is retrograde, you do not have all the answers during the retrograde. There are still things that are yet to be revealed. On July 12th, when the sun meets up with Mercury, this is going to give us that flash of intuition, that flash of insight, and you're going to have a little bit more clarity then. But up until the retrograde is actually over and out of its shadow period, which is going to be in August, around August 8th, that's when we're finally going to have that full clarity and understanding of what the retrograde was about and how we are going to move forward from there. So use the time of the retrograde to really just look over all of these aspects of your life concerning long distance travel, higher education, belief systems. Go over it, experiment with new ideas, new ideologies, experiment with the idea, or maybe even traveling somewhere new, traveling somewhere different. There could be issues that come up with travel if you do have plans to travel, being that Mercury will be retrograde in your ninth house. So there could be some travel delays, there could be some issues that come up in terms of travel, but overall, it's just to help you reorganize, restructure, and reflect that maybe where in the plans that you originally had isn't exactly where you're meant to be going. And that's why Mercury retrogrades happen, because it's like, I know you had a set plan and you had a vision this way, but let's make sure that we're going back, looking over all the details so that we are really sure that that's the direction we want to go before we fully lock in on it. If you are a Libra rising, then this Mercury retrograde is happening in your 10th house. The 10th house has to do with your career, your public image, your reputation. And so there could be a lot of self-reflection going on during this Mercury retrograde period about your career and what it is that you feel like your purpose is and what it is you're meant to be doing. You can revise a current business strategy that you have going on. There can be changes that go on in your professional life that make you reconsider the path that you're currently on and whether or not this is something that you truly want to do. You can have a lot of important conversations that come up, professional conversations that change your perspective on your path. I would just be extremely mindful because this is happening in the sign of Cancer. Cancer is an emotional sign, so there could be some things that maybe are said in emotion in the moment because you're feeling it, and then maybe a few days later you realize and change your mind because your feelings have changed. So making sure that you're not making any rash emotional decisions, especially when it comes to your career, when it comes to your reputation, during this Mercury retrograde, making sure that the decisions that you do end up making are ones that are grounded, ones that you have already considered in the past, and maybe this Mercury retrograde is just bringing it up to you as more reflection, something that you've already looked over all the details, you've already been considering maybe pivoting, and Mercury retrograde is just like the fire that lights up under you, being like, yes, I need to change. I've been thinking about this for a long time. Mercury is now retrograde in my 10th house. I can't do this anymore. I need to shift. If it's something that you've been considering for a while, if it's not something that has popped up on your radar, some emotional thing happens or something happens that triggers your emotion, and now all of a sudden you want to jump ship, you want to change careers, you want to change paths entirely, I would just be a little bit mindful, making sure that you're waiting until the retrograde is over, or at least the Kazemi point, which is going to be happening on July 12th. This is going to give us the clarity and the insight of what this Mercury retrograde is all about and whether or not you are meant to shift, pivot, and change your career paths. On July 24th, that's when Mercury does go direct. It's finally going to go forward as opposed to going backwards and reflecting and revising and going over past situations. Mercury will start moving forward over the things and the ideas and situations that we have already revised. However, it will not be entirely out of the retrograde shadow period until August 7th and 8th. So after that point, Mercury will finally start moving forward in new uncharted territory. So things will become a lot more clear as we move towards that date from July 24th, continuing onwards up until we get to August 7th and 8th. Then things will start feeling a little bit more clear, like all of the issues and reflections and things that we've gone over during the retrograde are going to start feeling a lot more clear, a lot more clarity. That would be a better time to make any decisions. But during the retrograde, as Mercury is going backwards in the sky and doing the reflecting and trying to understand and maybe change and pivot things, that's going to be more of a time of experimentation and just seeing where the chips fall. And once Mercury retrograde is over, as I mentioned, then that would be a better time to move forward on things. If you are a Virgo rising, then this Mercury retrograde is happening in your 11th house. The 11th house has to do with your networks, your friendship groups, your hopes, your dreams, your aspirations. So all of these themes and topics are going to come under review at this time. You may decide that your current friendship groups, or the current people that you're surrounding yourself with, maybe are not in line with where it is that you want to go. Or you could be shifting or changing your goals and your dreams. Maybe you had a certain vision for your future and what it is that you wanted to accomplish. And that's something that you've been working forward and towards for a while. And now all of a sudden during this Mercury retrograde, things kind of shift up a little bit. It could be because you figure out some new information, or you realize that by working towards this certain ideal or this certain dream, that you didn't realize there were certain aspects of it that maybe you aren't totally on board with, you aren't totally excited about. I'm not saying to completely abandon everything that you've been working towards during a Mercury retrograde. It's usually just a time of reflection and going over what is it that I truly want to accomplish. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to change and pivot directions entirely. It could be that during the retrograde, you may feel a little bit unstable, you may feel a little bit unsure, but as Mercury goes direct, you realize, oh, actually, never mind. Like, I do want to do this. This is truly what I want to do. And you feel a lot more certain and confident in your decision. So during the retrograde, there is that little bit of insecurity, a little bit of instability when it comes to your friendship groups, when it comes to your hopes, your dreams, and your visions for the future. All of that's just coming under review within yourself. It's a time for introspection, being like, what is it that I want my life to truly look like? What type of friendship groups do I truly want around me? Is the way my life is currently set up, is that reflective of that? Do I truly want to go down that path? It may be that you decide, actually, I don't. I want to pivot. I don't like my friendship groups. I don't like where it is that I'm going towards. This goal or ideal or vision that I had in mind is not something I want to do anymore. And as Mercury goes direct, you may decide that you want to pivot. Like I said, I wouldn't suggest completely pivoting, burning bridges, or completely changing the script during the retrograde, even if that is something that you're experimenting with. It's okay to experiment with the idea. It's okay to, explore different things during the retrograde. It's just to give you a better understanding and give you more clarity as to what direction you truly want to go. So when Mercury does go direct on July 24th, you can confidently make a decision. It doesn't have to be on the exact day either. I'm just saying that Mercury does go direct on July 24th. Could be a couple days after, especially as Mercury leaves the shadow period, which will be on August 7th. It will completely be out of the area of retrograde, so there will be even more clarity coming in that during that time. But once again, I wouldn't make any rash decisions during the retrograde. I would wait until the retrograde is over and Mercury is moving direct to truly analyze everything that happened during the retrograde and see, is this truly where I want to go, or do I really want to pivot? And finally, if you are a Leo rising, then this Mercury retrograde is happening in your 12th house. The 12th house is a hidden house. It is a house of introspection already. So the fact that you have Cancer in there, it's a very emotional, very intuitive, very spiritual sign. Having your 12th house being in the sign of Cancer already naturally rules these things. So there's going to be a lot of self-reflection, a lot of introspection happening right before your birthday month. There's going to be a lot of energy in the sign of Cancer for you guys as a Leo rising. So, a lot of energy coming through in terms of your dream space, your spiritual space, your intuition's going to be activated. Feelings of grief and loss can also come up to be healed. So, you may have a lot of past situations come up, memories coming up that are bringing up these feelings of grief, bringing up these feelings of loss, so that you can move through them, you can heal through them. And that way, once Leo season does come along, which is going to be towards the end of July, then you're going to have a better understanding and you're going to have cleared this heavier type of energy. So, this Mercury retrograde period can feel a little bit heavier for you as a Leo rising, simply because it is a heavier house, it is a more hidden house, it is subconscious, it is happening on the inside. So a lot of the changes that you're going to be going through are going to be mental. They're going to be subconscious, a lot of subconscious rewiring. And sometimes that can feel a little bit heavy. Sometimes that work can feel a little bit harder to deal with than the more physical stuff, right? Because not everyone sees what it is that you're going through. Everything that you're going through is all internal, it's mental, it is reflective. So if you do decide during this time, during Mercury retrograde, that you need some more time to yourself, you don't feel like being around people because you want to conserve your energy, or you feel like just being around people is just too much right now, it's totally normal, totally okay. Take as much time as you need to yourself to self-reflect, go over things. Shadow work would be this is a great time for you to do any type of shadow work, any type of dream work, dream interpretation, getting better with maybe controlling your dreams and like astral projection and things of that nature. Those types of themes are going to start coming up a little bit more so for you. Um, Being able to heal in different types of modalities, not necessarily physical ones, but more spiritual, like meditation, breath work, going to spiritual type of retreats can also be something that comes up for you during this Mercury retrograde. I would just be mindful that you're not over isolating yourself, making sure that you're still maintaining at least basic levels of interaction and communication with people that you do care about, so that you're not completely isolating to yourself, because this is a transit that can bring on some of that self isolation. And especially if you're dealing with these heavier and harder emotions, making sure that you're reaching out to someone that you trust, someone who cares about you, and someone who has some good advice for you and maybe can help you during this time of self reflection. So, yeah, that is all 12 signs how Mercury retrograde will be affecting you. I hope you guys enjoyed this reading. If you do want a personal reading with me, I offer them down below on my website. You can book one there. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.